So I heard you had a joke.
Oh, yeah. Well, they say when pigs fly, it means impossible, right?
Yeah, I've heard them say that. Yeah.
Then why is there swine flu? But
Ah, this guy. We're all gonna die. Hello, friendos. This is Chain, welcoming you back to Chain of Commander. For this month's visit to the Recruitment Office, I figured we'd bring on a personal friend of the channel here. I've started on the streams a couple, I think once, at least once right now, with plans to do them again in the future. But hey, let's have our guests introduce ourselves here.
Hi, everybody. I'm Colin at Colin O'Clock on Twitter and on Twitch. I do a weekly casual commander stream on Wednesdays at 8:30 Central PM.
Neat. And thank you for joining us, Colin. And who did you bring along as a commander for us to go over today?
Today I brought one of my favorites, which is Ilharg the Raze Boar from War of the Spark.
That's Sneak Attack Pig, right? Kind of.
Sneak Attack
Yeah.
Pig. That's exactly
All
right.
right. And what about Ilharg? Ilharg? Yeah, it is Ilharg. I've never actually paid attention to where the A and the R are. What about the pig drew you to him?
Well, it's kind of funny. Before Ilharg, I had only made decks out of precon decks. All of my precon decks I had upgraded and had some alternate commanders for the most part. Ilharg is my first build where I saw a commander, a legendary creature. It was in spoiler season for War of the Spark, and immediately I fell in love. I said, this card is broken. It's exactly what I want to do. I love big, beefy creatures. I love just smashing, and this is a little bit of both.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, this is very much about smashing things in here. So, you said you like beefy creatures. When you saw this card, what was the first big beefy creature you thought of that you wanted to smash face with the pig with?
Well, for me, I hadn't been playing for very long before this. I'd just come back to Magic in Rivals of Ixalan, and all I could think of was, how do I survive? How do I survive something coming out and swinging? So thinking back to like the cards that I already had from drafting and things like that, I was thinking about dragons because they fly. So you give them, they have that evasion, and I think the first thing I thought of was Lathless, the Dragon Queen, and I thought, okay, if I can have a bunch of creatures that come in flying and they just all happen to be dragons, then I could make even more dragons as long as Lathless is out there. So that's the deck started as an Oops All Dragons deck. I changed the name of it because because it's not really all dragons. I think just about half of the creatures are dragons, and then there's utility creatures. But at the same time, it's mostly geared toward
So maybe not
dragons.
oops all dragons, but oops a majority of dragons.
Exactly. Exactly.
All right. So what when building the deck, what kind of guided? Did you take Ilrog as like his ability in the lead, or did you kind of like dragons first? What was it from the bottom up, top down? How did you go about deciding how to build the deck?
Yeah, so for the most part, my decks are built with cards that I have on hand. So there were a bunch. Basically, just opened up my red card boxes and said, "Where's all the dragons that I could find?" And the original build was a budget dip build. It had some cards like Spark Tongue Dragon. I think it was from M19. So basically, just over time, and over different drafts and playing with friends, acquired a few more cards, and all I knew is I want big, giant flying creatures. There has to be some kind of ramp and some kind of card draw, but we're gonna focus on giant flying creatures, and that's where we started, and then. As we went along, the deck evolved, and there were a few key pieces that I got for it that I was really excited
Such
about.
as
Well, one of the big ones is Blightsteel Colossus. Now I know like that can be looked upon as like a cheaty face type of card. We're gonna sneak attack Blightsteel Colossus, but there are a few different reasons to have like I have to take someone out right now. It's not like I'm going to. It's not a combo where like you're just going to destroy the whole table at once. It's telegraphed, and at least 2 other people will know about it and be able to do something about it. But yeah,
I was definitely looking at over the list, and when you said, "Oh, it started off as a budget list," I'm looking at the Blightsteel Colossus, and I'm like, wonder where that one came in.
Yeah, that was actually, I have MTG Nerd Girl to thank for that. I had won a contest she was doing over Twitter and got credit to Cool Stuff Inc. And I never thought I would ever spend that much money for a card, and just so happened that it fell within that prize gift certificate.
Oh, well,
so
that's just definitely early thoughts there. Oh, I'll never spend $40. I'm never going to spend over $10 on the card. I'm never going to spend $40 on a card. I swear I'm not going to spend over $500 on a card. The good old days.
Yeah.
The good old days, but yeah.
But yeah, there were a few other cards I bought specifically for the deck. I don't know what the price is right now for it. I feel like it's one of the best cards in this deck, and it does something similar, which is Dragon Tyrant. It's a 10 mana dragon, 6/6 flyer. It has double strike and fire breathing. So pay 1 red and it pumps itself +1/+0. And with Ilharg's effect and putting that onto the battlefield, as many lands as you have that can produce red mana, all of a sudden you have 12 damage in the air turning into 14, 16, 20, as much as you could pump into it. So there's a couple of cards in there. Those 2 and one other are like my sort of win out of nowhere, saving from dying type cards. The other one is Hellkite Tyrant, which when it enters the battle, or when it deals combat damage, you gain control of all artifacts that person you damaged controls, and then if you have 20 or more artifacts, you win the game on your upkeep. So I like to include like 1 to 3 types of those cards in all of my decks, whether it's like Simic Ascendancy or Happily Ever After, or whatever it is, a card that says you win the game if you do this.
All right. Yeah, definitely. Those can do. Yeah. You pretty much nailed it on the head. Those can just win out of absolute nowhere. Going over your list here, there's something else I kind of noticed, kind of like a sub-theme, if you would. I'm seeing a lot of cards about things that occur at end step or taking advantage of stopping the game prior to the end step here. I do see that you have, Sundial of the Infinite in the deck, and you got a bunch of cards that kind of like take advantage of it. So tell me about like that kind of interaction you got in there.
Yeah, Sundial of the Infinite, it was originally in the deck just to stop the Ilharg trigger from happening. So Ilharg, at the beginning of your next end step, you have to return the creatures to your hand. Well, you could basically just leave all those creatures out by using Sundial of the Infinite's trigger, and that way you earn extra mana. It started with Sundial of the Infinite, and just recently I added Goblin Engineer to be able to find Sundial of the Infinite. So that's one way to get it. And the other things it's there for are straight up sneak attack, which I luckily opened in Double Masters pack. What's his name? Zerolan, which is a dragon tutor. Zerolan of the Claw just recently got talked a lot about because of Obeka, and Obeka's ability to end the turn. So Zerolan of the Claw says 1 red, tap, search your library for a dragon, put it into play as though it had haste, and at the end of the next turn you sack it, so leaving that dragon out there. Perforos does the same thing. The sneak attack Perforos from the most recent Theros set, Feldin, to create tokens of any dragons that have been killed from the battlefield and leaving that token out. And I think that about covers it. Oh, the other big one is Final Fortune, which also got some love recently because of Obeka. So this was a card I had before Obeka. Again, not sure about what the prices are on them now, but I think it shot up pretty big after Obeka was spoiled. But a way to take an extra turn, and instead of losing the game at the end of your turn, if you have Sundial of the Infinite, you can stop the turn and not
missed
lose
that
the game.
trigger completely. I did notice, however, it's weird because now these days when you see Final Fortune, you often see people also run what was it, Isochron Scepter to kind of repeat that. But I did notice that was lacking here, so it looks like you're not trying to go too hard into the combo, and it does look like you're trying to be as fair as an Ilharg deck can be with this. Minus the Blightsteel Colossus.
Yeah, most of my decks are fair enough where, you know, I'm not trying to do anything too broken, but still do some splashy big stuff.
All right, yeah. The only other card that I saw on this list here that I really wanted you to talk about, just because this card is crazy, is Mirror March. So, what has Mirror March done for you so far with this deck?
I've actually never played Mirror March. I've never drawn it, but the hope is there, right? So Mirror March, one of the amazing things about the deck is when you have something like a 6 mana enchantment that does absolutely nothing, you can still tap out 6 mana if you have Ilharg on the battlefield, attack, and you're still going to get that dragon or whatever big creature that enters the battlefield for Mirror March to trigger on the turn it came out without having to spend any extra mana. So the dream is most of the dragons, most of these creatures are not legendary. There are a few of them that I named earlier, but even some things like the utility creatures that I have, one comes to mind, which is Fanatic of Mogus, or Fanatic of Mogi, which is basically the red-gray Merchant of Asphodel. When it enters the battlefield, it deals damage to each opponent equal to your devotion to red. So being able to do something like that and make multiple copies of that with Mirror March and whatever like 3 red pip dragons you have on the battlefield already, or Ilharg, which has 2 red pips, is a way to sort of drain everybody of a ton of life all at once. Again, mostly focusing on enter the battlefield triggers. So there's a whole bunch of things like that do that. The other benefits of that, I had Warstorm Surge in the deck and recently added Terror of the Peaks into the deck. The funny thing is I didn't open Terror of the Peaks in M21, but it was in my Jumpstart box, which I was really happy about. But Terror of the Peaks does something similar to Warstorm Surge, where when something enters the battlefield, it deals damage equal to the creature's power to any target. And so being able to do stuff like that with Warstorm Surge or Terror of the Peaks on the battlefield, especially with dragons that have fire breathing, so all that extra red mana that's left up because you didn't cast anything, it just entered the battlefield tapped and attacking, you can, with that trigger on the stack, pump them up and increase their power if you need to deal with something or someone very big.
That is true. All right, looking forward here with Kaldheim coming out here. What from the new set, if anything, have you kind of been looking at as possibly trying out in the deck or seeing if it can fit in the Ilharg Throw Dragons thing?
Yeah, so I had noticed Goldspan Dragon, I think it's called, which is the one that allows you to use treasures for twice as much mana. But there wasn't anything that I pinned as immediately I want to put in this deck. I think the red Storyteller card that allows you to add 1 red mana for each spell you cast would be helpful with something like the fire breathing effect, or Leyline Tyrant, which is another recent addition from Zendikar, which your red mana doesn't disappear, and when Leyline Tyrant dies, you have all that red mana do damage to somebody. So that's something that you don't mind sacrificing if you have a bunch of red mana to pump into it. So those were two of the things that came to mind. I know there's the dwarf that sort of searches for a dragon, but it's not really something that's going to fit in the deck yet.
All right. At this point, I think you have given us a very in-depth and thorough analysis of how this deck is kind of set up to play. It looks super fun. Dragons are, I think, my second favorite tribal type behind Hydras there. So anything that can convince me to swing dragons at people, I don't need much convincing for. But I want you to take one more look at the camera here. Look right into the camera you got there in front of you. And to our viewers at home who might not be convinced yet that throwing dragons at people is fun, I want you to tell them one last pitch for this deck as to why they should be playing Ilharg the Raze Boar.
Okay, a lot of the times you're sitting around a play group and everyone has their board states and there's these big crazy things out on the battlefield and they're going to attack that person with the big crazy things out on the battlefield. But with Ilharg, all you have is this innocent little pig on the battlefield just sitting there chilling. You might have some cards in your hand. They don't know what they do, so they'll leave you alone for a little bit. They'll think you're stuck, and then all of a sudden there's bam, 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 dragons coming out of nowhere, and oops, they forgot to attack you because it's all or mostly dragons. So that's my pitch. It's a lot of fun, and if anything, it's splashy, and that's something that's fun to do.
All right, I'll include a list for the viewers at home to check it out so they can see, kind of get maybe a good starting point if they want to build their own Ilharg deck here. But Colin, thank you very much for joining me today. This was an absolute pleasure having you on. If you could just tell the viewers one more time where they can find you.
Yep, find me at Colin O'Clock on Twitter and twitch.tv/Colin O'Clock. We stream again 8:30 p.m. Central on Wednesdays every Wednesday. And Shane, I'm hoping to get you back on.
That is indeed the plan. I know that you've been working on your boxing league recently, so once that's wrapped up, I should be all ready to get back in there.
Great. I'll bring Ilharg.
Excellent.
Now that you know what's coming.
Well, to the viewers at home, thank you for joining us today. I hope this kind of helps sway your opinion in Ilharg as a possible potential deck for you in the future. Beyond that, thank you for joining us. I'd love to have you folks hanging out with us, and we'll see you again in the future. Adios.
Bye.